You're not broken. Your mind just runs patterns you've never been taught to control. This audiobook shows you how to rewire those patterns and finally get out of your own way. Take control of your mind. Audiobook. Introduction. Every morning you wake up with the best intentions. Today will be different. Today you'll finally follow through. You'll maintain focus, avoid distractions, and make real progress toward your goals. Yet somehow, by day's end, you find yourself exactly where you started, frustrated, disappointed, and wondering why you can't seem to get out of your own way. This constant battle with your mind leaves you exhausted. You know exactly what you should do, but something invisible seems to hold you back. The cycle is painfully familiar. Bursts of motivation followed by periods of procrastination, moments of clarity clouded by self-doubt, and ambitious plans derailed by old habits that refuse to die. You've probably tried everything: productivity systems, morning routines, meditation apps, and countless self-improvement strategies. Some work for a while, but eventually, the old patterns return. It's not because you lack discipline or willpower. The real issue runs deeper. You're fighting against your mind's operating system without understanding how it actually works. Your mind isn't broken, and you don't need fixing. What you're experiencing isn't a character flaw, it's the predictable outcome of specific mental patterns running on autopilot. These patterns were installed to protect you, but now they limit you. They're like software running in the background, influencing every decision and action without your awareness. Taking control of your mind doesn't require monk-like discipline or a complete personality overhaul. It doesn't demand perfect consistency or heroic willpower. Instead, it requires understanding how your mind naturally functions and working with those tendencies rather than against them. This book reveals the hidden architecture of your thoughts and shows you how to redirect their flow. You'll discover why fighting against mental patterns only strengthens them, and how subtle shifts in perspective can transform your entire experience. You'll learn to recognize the difference between your authentic voice and the echo of old programming. The journey ahead isn't about becoming someone new through force of will. It's about removing the barriers that prevent you from being who you already are. Your mind, currently experienced as a source of limitation, will become your greatest ally in creating the life you know is possible, but haven't yet been able to achieve. As you turn these chapters, approach each insight with curiosity rather than judgment. You're not here to learn what you lack, but to discover what's already within you, waiting to be unleashed. The path to mental mastery isn't about adding more complexity. It's about seeing through the illusions that make life feel complicated. Your transformation begins with a simple shift in perspective. Ready to discover how powerful your mind can be when you stop fighting it and start understanding it. Chapter 1. The Garden of Your Mind. Have you ever noticed how the same thought, repeated often enough, begins to feel like an undeniable truth? Your mind operates like a vast garden where every thought is a seed that, when given attention and energy, grows into the reality you experience. Some of these thought seeds were planted intentionally through conscious choice, but many, perhaps most, took root without your awareness, scattered by past experiences, others' expectations, and societal conditioning. In this mental garden, thoughts that receive regular attention naturally flourish. When you consistently focus on a particular idea or belief, you water it with your energy, fertilize it with supporting evidence, and protect it from contradicting perspectives. Your mind, operating on deeply ingrained patterns, automatically maintains these established thought patterns, creating a self-reinforcing cycle that can either limit or liberate you. This automatic maintenance system explains why simply trying to force yourself to think positive or directly combat negative thoughts rarely creates lasting change. When you fight against unwanted thoughts, you paradoxically strengthen them by giving them more attention. It's like trying to eliminate weeds by staring at them intensely. Your focus actually nourishes what you're trying to remove. Understanding this dynamic reveals why traditional approaches to mental mastery often fall short. You can't transform your mental landscape through willpower alone. Instead, real change begins with understanding how your mind naturally operates and working with these tendencies rather than against them. Consider how your mind filters incoming information to maintain its existing belief structure. When you hold a strong belief, whether empowering or limiting, your brain automatically searches for evidence that confirms this perspective while overlooking or dismissing contradicting information. This selective attention mechanism explains why two people can experience the same situation, yet walk away with completely different interpretations. The key to transforming your mental garden lies not in forcing change, but in consciously directing your attention. By choosing where to focus your awareness, you naturally strengthen certain thoughts while allowing others to diminish through neglect. This process doesn't require struggle or resistance, just as a garden doesn't fight against weeds, but simply favors desired plants through careful tending. This brings us to a crucial distinction. You are both the garden and the gardener. Your thoughts make up the mental landscape, but you are also the awareness that observes these thoughts. This dual nature, being both the content of consciousness and consciousness itself, provides the leverage point for real transformation. To experience this distinction directly, pause for a moment and notice your thoughts. Observe them as they arise, move through your awareness, and fade away. Notice how you can be aware of your thoughts without being completely absorbed in them. This observing presence, this witnessing consciousness, is your true position of power. From this awareness, you gain the ability to choose which thoughts to nurture and which to let naturally fade. You're no longer at the mercy of every thought that enters your mind, believing each one simply because it appears. Instead, you become the conscious curator of your mental space, the intentional gardener of your internal landscape. This fundamental shift in perspective, from being unconsciously controlled by thoughts to consciously directing them, forms the foundation of mental mastery. It's not about forcing your mind into submission, but about understanding its nature and working with its natural tendencies to create the inner environment you desire. This capacity to distinguish between thoughts and the thinker, between the garden and the gardener, is your first step in reclaiming authority over your mind. It's not a technique to master, but a natural ability to recognize and embrace. As you develop this awareness, you'll find yourself naturally able to nurture thoughts that serve your growth, while allowing limiting beliefs to gradually lose their grip through simple lack of attention. Your relationship with your thoughts transforms from one of helpless reactions to conscious interaction. Just as a skilled gardener doesn't fight against every weed but simply focuses on cultivating desired plants, you'll discover that your attention naturally flows toward empowering thoughts when you stop believing every mental narrative that appears. This isn't about forcing change, but about allowing your innate wisdom to guide you toward what truly matters. Each moment becomes an opportunity to choose which thoughts deserve your energy and which can simply drift away unattended. The mental battles that once consumed you begin to dissolve not through struggle, but through the simple recognition that you can observe your thoughts without becoming entangled in them. Like clouds passing through a vast sky, your thoughts move through awareness without disturbing your inner peace when you recognize your role as the observer rather than the content being observed. Chapter 2. The Two Voices Within. You stand at the edge of taking action on a long-held dream, feeling the simultaneous pull of possibility and the weight of protective hesitation. This moment of internal conflict isn't a sign of weakness or indecision. It's the natural interplay of two distinct voices that have evolved within your mind for specific purposes. Within every human mind exist two fundamental operating systems: the protective voice of limitation and the expansive voice of possibility. The protective voice speaks first and loudest, not because it's more true, but because it evolved to keep you safe in a world where physical and social survival meant everything. This voice generates doubt, fear, and self-criticism not to harm you, but to shield you from potential pain, failure, and rejection. When you consider stepping outside your comfort zone, this protective mechanism activates automatically. It floods your consciousness with every potential risk, past failure, and future uncertainty. What if you fail? Remember last time? You're not ready. You'll look foolish. Better to stay safe. These thoughts feel incredibly authentic precisely because they tap into real fears and past experiences. They command immediate attention because they're linked to your survival instincts. Meanwhile, the voice of possibility speaks in a different tone entirely. It whispers of potential, growth, and fulfillment. This voice aligns with your deeper values and aspirations, yet often feels more distant or less realistic because it's not tied to immediate survival. When it says, "You can grow through this," this aligns with your values. This matters more than temporary discomfort. It's speaking from a place of wisdom rather than fear. These voices manifest in every significant decision you face. In career choices, the protective voice emphasizes security and warns against risk, while the voice of possibility envisions growth and impact. In relationships, one voice guards against vulnerability to prevent potential hurt, while the other recognizes the value of authentic connection. In creative pursuits, the protective voice critiques every attempt to maintain safe mediocrity, while the voice of possibility encourages expression and growth. The key insight isn't about silencing the protective voice. Its vigilance serves an important purpose. Instead, understanding comes from recognizing that these voices require balance and proper context. The protective voice excels at identifying genuine threats, but often misclassified growth opportunities as dangers. The voice of possibility excels at identifying meaningful opportunities, but might overlook legitimate risks. You can distinguish these voices by their characteristic patterns. The protective voice tends to speak in absolutes, generates immediate emotional reactions, and often creates physical tension or constriction in your body. It uses phrases like never, always, you can't, and you should. The voice of possibility tends to speak in terms of growth and options, generates a sense of expansion or excitement, even if accompanied by nervous energy, and often creates a feeling of openness or lightness in your body. This understanding transforms your relationship with internal dialogue. Rather than fighting against your protective voice or dismissing it as mere negativity, you can acknowledge its intention while consciously choosing whether its guidance serves the current situation. Similarly, you can learn to recognize and amplify the voice of possibility, especially in areas where you consistently hold yourself back from expressing your full capabilities. In your mental garden, these voices are like different types of plants. Both have their place and purpose. The protective voice provides necessary boundaries and caution, like sturdy walls that give structure to your garden. The voice of possibility represents the flowering plants that bring beauty, growth, and expansion within those boundaries. Your role as the gardener is to maintain a balance that allows both to serve their proper function without either one dominating the landscape. This awareness becomes particularly crucial in moments of choice, when you're considering a new opportunity, facing a challenge, or feeling pulled toward growth. By recognizing which voice is speaking and understanding its underlying purpose, you gain the power to respond consciously rather than react habitually. In these pivotal moments, your ability to distinguish between the protective whispers of fear and the expansive call of possibility determines whether you remain confined by old patterns or step into new territory. The voice that speaks loudest isn't necessarily the one that serves you best. Sometimes the quieter wisdom of possibility holds the key to your next breakthrough. Your task isn't to silence either voice, but to develop the discernment to know which guidance serves your highest growth in each situation. Chapter 3. The Myth of Willpower. What if everything you've been taught about willpower and self-discipline is fundamentally flawed? Across society, we've inherited a deeply entrenched belief that success and personal change depend primarily on our ability to force ourselves into compliance through sheer determination. This perspective has created an exhausting cycle. You set ambitious intentions, summon your willpower to stay on track, inevitably deplete your mental resources, fall back into old patterns, and then blame yourself for lacking discipline. This misunderstanding of how willpower actually works has led countless individuals to conclude there must be something wrong with them. After all, if self-discipline is simply a muscle that grows stronger with use, then repeated failure must indicate some personal deficiency. But modern neuroscience reveals a different truth. Willpower functions more like a battery with limited daily capacity than a muscle that consistently strengthens through exertion. Each decision you make, each temptation you resist, each task requiring focused attention draws from this finite reservoir of mental energy. When you rely solely on willpower to drive change, you're not building sustainable strength. You're depleting a critical resource that requires regular recharging. This explains why even the most determined individuals often find their resolve crumbling by evening, or why periods of perfect compliance frequently lead to dramatic reversals. The traditional approach of forcing change through willpower creates a particularly destructive pattern. You begin each attempt with intense determination, pushing yourself to override natural inclinations through mental force. Initially, riding the wave of motivation, this appears to work. But as your willpower battery depletes, resistance grows stronger. Eventually, the effort becomes unsustainable, leading to reversion to previous patterns, now accompanied by feelings of failure and diminished self-trust. The alternative lies in understanding and working with your mind's natural functioning rather than attempting to dominate it through force. Consider the difference between swimming against a powerful current versus positioning yourself to move with it. The first approach requires constant energy expenditure and eventually leads to exhaustion, regardless of your strength or determination. The second approach harnesses the water's natural flow, allowing you to progress with significantly less effort. This principle of alignment represents a fundamental shift in how you approach personal change. Instead of viewing your current patterns as enemies to be conquered, they become valuable signals indicating areas where your conscious intentions and unconscious motivations are misaligned. Resistance, rather than representing a personal failure, serves as crucial feedback highlighting where attention is needed. When you experience persistent difficulty maintaining a desired change, it's not because you lack willpower. It's because you're trying to force a new behavior without addressing the underlying needs and values driving your current patterns. This creates an internal conflict that depletes your mental resources while failing to resolve the root cause. True transformation occurs when you align your conscious goals with your deeper motivations, creating a state where desired changes feel like natural expressions rather than forced impositions. This doesn't mean change becomes effortless, but it does become sustainable, powered by genuine internal harmony rather than constant mental force. Your mind's resistance patterns contain vital information about unmet needs, unacknowledged values, and unresolved conflicts. By learning to interpret this feedback, rather than fight against it, you transform what appears to be opposition into valuable guidance for creating lasting change. The path forward requires shifting from a combat mindset to one of curiosity and collaboration with your own nature. Instead of asking, "How can I force myself to change?" begin asking, "What does my resistance reveal about what I truly need?" This subtle but profound shift transforms the change process from a battle of will into an exploration of alignment. This approach doesn't eliminate the need for effort or dedication, but it fundamentally alters how that effort is applied. Rather than exhausting yourself swimming against the current of your natural tendencies, you learn to adjust your course to work with the flow of your authentic motivations. Your energy shifts from battling internal resistance to understanding its deeper message, from forcing change through sheer willpower to discovering paths of natural momentum. You'll find that what once felt like an uphill struggle transforms into a journey of purposeful navigation, where each step forward aligns with your inner truth rather than contradicting it. The same determination that drove your previous attempts now fuels a wiser, more sustainable approach to transformation. Chapter 4: The Power of Perception. Two individuals face the exact same situation. Their company announces major organizational changes that will significantly impact their roles. One immediately sees impending disaster, anticipating lost opportunities and diminished influence. The other perceives exciting possibilities for growth, new connections, and fresh challenges to master. Same circumstance, radically different experiences. This stark contrast illuminates a fundamental truth about human consciousness. Your experience of life is determined not by events themselves, but by how you perceive them. This isn't merely positive thinking or reframing. It's the actual mechanism through which your mind creates your lived reality moment by moment. Your brain receives an estimated 11 million bits of sensory information every second, yet you consciously process only about 40 bits. This massive filtering occurs automatically through perceptual patterns developed over your lifetime. These filters aren't random. They're shaped by your beliefs, expectations, and past experiences. They determine not just what you notice, but how you interpret what you notice. Think of these filters as invisible lenses through which you view reality. Just as colored glasses tint everything you see without you actively thinking about it, these perceptual filters continuously shape your experience without conscious awareness. They're so fundamental to how you process reality that you mistake their interpretations for objective truth. This creates a powerful self-reinforcing loop. You perceive what you expect to perceive and unconsciously screen out what contradicts your expectations. If you believe people are generally untrustworthy, you'll quickly notice evidence supporting this view while missing countless examples that could challenge it. Your perception creates your reality, which then reinforces your perception. Understanding this mechanism reveals why two people can encounter the same situation, yet have completely different experiences. It's not that one is right and one is wrong. They're literally experiencing different versions of reality based on their perceptual filters. To demonstrate this principle, pause for a moment and look around your current environment. Notice what initially draws your attention. Now, consciously shift your focus to look for a specific color, perhaps blue. Suddenly, blue objects pop out that you hadn't noticed before. They were always there, but your attention was filtered differently. This simple exercise reveals something profound. What you perceive changes based on where you direct your attention. The objects didn't change, your perceptual filter did. This same principle applies to every aspect of your experience, from how you view opportunities to how you interpret challenges. Your perception doesn't just filter your experience, it actively creates it. When you approach a situation expecting difficulty, your brain automatically searches for and amplifies problems while downplaying positive aspects. This isn't happening consciously. It's your perceptual filters operating on autopilot. The key insight isn't just that perception shapes reality. It's that these perceptual filters can be adjusted. Just as you can consciously choose to look for different colors in your environment, you can learn to shift the filters through which you view situations, relationships, and possibilities. This doesn't mean forcing yourself to see everything positively. Instead, it means developing the capacity to recognize when your default perceptual filters are unnecessarily limiting your experience. Are you automatically filtering for threats, for confirmation of your limitations, for evidence that change is impossible? These filters aren't your fault. They developed as efficiency mechanisms to help you navigate life, but many have become outdated, unconsciously restricting your possibilities rather than serving your growth. The first step in expanding beyond them is simply recognizing their existence. Just as a photographer understands how different lenses affect an image, becoming aware of your perceptual filters allows you to make conscious choices about how you view situations. This awareness creates space between the automatic filter and your response, allowing new possibilities to emerge. Your perceptual filters are currently managing your mental garden without your conscious input. Understanding how they work puts you back in the gardener's role, able to choose which perspectives to nurture and which to adjust. This isn't about positive thinking. It's about expanding your perceptual range to access the full spectrum of possibilities available in any situation. The reality you experience isn't fixed. It's being created moment by moment through your perceptual filters. As you develop the ability to recognize and adjust these filters, you gain access to new dimensions of experience that were always present but previously filtered from view. This is the foundation of true mental mastery, not forcing change through willpower, but expanding perception to access new possibilities. Chapter 5. Emotional Intelligence. Your body knows before your mind catches up. That tension in your shoulders when faced with an important decision, the heaviness in your chest when confronted with change, the flutter in your stomach before speaking in public. These physical sensations aren't just side effects of your thoughts. They're the very language through which your emotions communicate and influence your actions. Consider how often you've known exactly what you should do, yet felt somehow unable to take action. You understand logically that speaking up in that meeting would advance your career, but your throat tightens and words refuse to form. You recognize the importance of having that difficult conversation, but your heart races, and you find yourself postponing it again. You're aware that starting that project now would be wise, but a mysterious weight seems to pin you to inaction. This gap between intellectual understanding and emotional reality reveals a crucial truth about human behavior. Knowledge alone doesn't create change. Information lives in the mind, but action emerges through the body, and emotions serve as the bridge between the two. Every emotional state manifests physically. Anxiety isn't just worried thoughts, it's shallow breathing, increased heart rate, and muscle tension. Confidence isn't just positive self-talk, it's an upright posture, steady breathing, and relaxed muscles. These physical manifestations create what neuroscience reveals as action readiness patterns, literally shaping which actions feel possible or impossible in any given moment. This explains why purely rational approaches to change often fail. You can't think your way out of an emotional state any more than you can think your way out of rain. Emotions, like weather patterns, move through your mental landscape. They create real conditions that affect your experience, but they don't define the landscape itself. Understanding this weather metaphor transforms your relationship with emotions. Just as you wouldn't try to fight or suppress the rain, attempting to suppress emotions only intensifies them. Instead, developing the capacity to experience emotions without being controlled by them creates true choice. You can acknowledge the storm while maintaining your direction. Emotional literacy, the ability to identify, name, and understand emotional states, creates this critical space between stimulus and response where mental control becomes possible. When you can recognize the physical signatures of emotions early, you gain the ability to respond rather than react. Your body provides constant emotional feedback through subtle signals, tension patterns, energy levels, breathing changes, postural shifts. These physical cues precede full emotional activation, offering early warning systems if you learn to read them. This awareness creates a window of opportunity where you can maintain mental clarity even as emotions intensify. The key lies in shifting attention from mental analysis to bodily sensation. Instead of getting caught in thoughts about the emotion, bring curious attention to its physical expression. Where do you feel it in your body? What qualities does it have? Temperature, texture, movement. This simple shift from thinking about to experiencing often naturally transforms the emotion's intensity and grip. Emotions then become valuable information rather than overwhelming forces. Anxiety signals where you care deeply and might need preparation. Anger reveals important boundaries or values being crossed. Sadness points to meaningful losses that deserve acknowledgement. Each emotion carries intelligence when you learn its language. This body-centered approach aligns perfectly with the garden metaphor explored earlier. Just as a skilled gardener reads subtle signs in the soil and plants, developing emotional literacy allows you to read the subtle signals in your internal landscape. You learn to distinguish between passing weather and deeper patterns, between storms that require shelter and those that bring needed nourishment. Through this understanding, emotions transform from obstacles into allies in creating sustainable change. Rather than fighting against emotional reality through willpower, you learn to work with the intelligence of your emotional system. This alignment between mind and body creates the foundation for authentic transformation, where knowing becomes doing through the bridge of feeling. This embodied approach resolves the paradox of control. True mental mastery comes not from dominating emotions, but from developing the capacity to experience them fully while maintaining your chosen direction. Like a skilled captain navigating through changing weather, you learn to work with conditions rather than against them, maintaining your course while adapting to the reality of each moment. This balance between steadiness and flexibility transforms your relationship with emotional turbulence. Instead of bracing against emotional storms or trying to force calm seas, you develop the wisdom to adjust your sails while keeping sight of your destination. Your emotions become valuable indicators of inner weather patterns rather than obstacles to overcome, offering guidance that enriches your journey rather than derailing it. Chapter 6: The Attention Economy. What if your most valuable resource isn't time or money, but attention? And what if that resource is being systematically harvested without your awareness? In today's hyper-connected world, your ability to direct and sustain focus has become the ultimate currency, yet it's being depleted at an unprecedented rate. Your attention shapes your reality in ways far more fundamental than most realize. Every moment, your brain processes approximately 11 million bits of sensory information, yet you consciously register only about 40 bits. This selective attention mechanism, essential for preventing overwhelming sensory overload, means that your conscious experience represents less than 1% of available information. What determines which information makes it through this filter? Your focus. This filtering process worked perfectly in our ancestral environment, where threats were physical and immediate. However, modern technology has created an environment explicitly designed to hijack these attention mechanisms. Social media platforms, news feeds, and entertainment systems employ sophisticated algorithms and psychological triggers to capture and monetize your mental energy. Each notification, headline, and auto-playing video exploits the brain's inherent bias toward novelty and potential threat. Understanding attention as your most precious resource transforms how you approach mental mastery. Like a spotlight illuminating a dark room, your focus determines which aspects of reality become vivid and actionable, while others fade into shadow. This isn't just metaphorical. Neuroscience shows that sustained attention physically reshapes neural pathways, strengthening connections related to focused areas while weakening others through neglect. The impact of attention extends beyond immediate experience. Research in neuroplasticity demonstrates that your brain continuously adapts based on what you consistently focus on. Dwelling on problems literally strengthens neural networks associated with those problems, while directing attention towards solutions builds pathways that support constructive action. This process operates like compound interest in the realm of consciousness. Every moment of focused attention represents an investment that yields returns in the form of enhanced neural connections and expanded awareness in chosen areas. Conversely, scattered attention creates a poverty of mental resources, depleting cognitive capacity while reinforcing patterns of distraction. Modern technology companies understand this principle intimately. They employ teams of psychologists and engineers to design interfaces that fragment attention into increasingly smaller units, capitalizing on the dopamine-driven feedback loops that keep you engaged with their platforms. Each scroll, click, and share activates reward circuits originally designed to help our ancestors survive, now repurposed to maintain engagement with digital streams of information. The consequences of this attention harvesting extend far beyond wasted time. When your focus constantly shifts between tasks, devices, and streams of information, you operate in a state of continuous partial attention. This cognitive fragmentation impairs deep thinking, weakens memory formation, and reduces emotional regulation capacity. Studies show that even the presence of a smartphone, even when turned off, reduces available cognitive capacity. Yet this understanding also reveals the path to reclaiming mental control. By recognizing attention as an investment rather than an infinite resource, You can begin making conscious choices about where to direct this precious energy. This requires developing awareness of both external triggers designed to capture attention and internal patterns that disperse it. The modern attention economy has created an environment where focus must be actively protected rather than passively maintained. This protection involves both external boundaries, like digital minimalism and designated periods of deep focus, and internal discipline in directing attention toward what truly matters rather than what demands immediate response. The relationship between attention and reality creation operates as a feedback loop. What you focus on expands in your awareness, which influences your actions, which in turn creates results that reinforce the original focus. This mechanism works equally well whether directed toward problems or solutions, limitations or possibilities. Each moment of attention acts as a vote for what matters in your world, gradually sculpting your perception until it becomes your lived experience. When you habitually focus on obstacles, your mind becomes expert at spotting barriers everywhere, turning even minor challenges into seemingly insurmountable walls. But this same powerful mechanism transforms into a catalyst for growth when you train your attention on opportunities and solutions. Your focus doesn't just filter reality. It actively participates in creating it through the choices and actions that naturally flow from your dominant thoughts. The person fixated on financial scarcity notices every expense and missed opportunity, while someone attuned to abundance recognizes potential in unexpected places. Each perspective becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, not through magical thinking, but through the natural way your focus shapes your decisions, actions, and ultimately your outcomes. Chapter 7. Identifying your mental prison. When a cage door finally opens, you might expect the bird inside to immediately take flight toward freedom. Yet something remarkable often happens. The bird remains perched inside, bound not by metal bars, but by invisible limitations it has internalized. This phenomenon reveals a profound truth about human psychology. We too can become imprisoned not by external circumstances, but by boundaries that exist solely in our minds. Your mental prison formed gradually through years of experiences, social conditioning, and interpreted failures. Each time you heard, "That's not possible," "Stay realistic," or "Know your place," another bar solidified. Each rejection, setback, or criticism reinforced these constraints until they became your accepted reality. Like that caged bird, you may have stopped testing the boundaries long ago, accepting limitations as immutable facts rather than temporary interpretations. These self-imposed restrictions manifest across every aspect of life. You hold back from pursuing career opportunities because people like me don't get those positions. You avoid deeper connections because relationships always end in pain. You abandon creative projects because I'm not talented enough. These boundaries feel real because they've been reinforced by years of habitual thought patterns, yet they exist solely in perception. What makes these mental prisons so persistent is that they serve a crucial psychological function. They keep you safe from uncertainty, rejection, and the responsibility that comes with greater freedom. The comfort of familiar limitations often feels preferable to the anxiety of unlimited possibility. Your brain, designed to prioritize survival over growth, naturally gravitates towards certainty, even when that certainty limits your potential. These boundaries maintain themselves through three primary mechanisms. First, the comfort of the familiar. Your nervous system inherently trusts what it knows, even if what it knows causes pain. Second, identity protection. Your mind resists changes that challenge your established self-image, even if that self-image is limiting. Third, the brain's bias towards certainty. Given the choice between a known limitation and an unknown possibility, your mind typically chooses the former. Yet these boundaries dissolve instantly when truly challenged by awareness. Consider how many times in life you've discovered that a certainty was merely an assumption. Remember moments when circumstances forced you beyond your comfort zone, revealing capabilities you didn't know you possessed. These experiences demonstrate that your limitations are more flexible than they appear. Your mental prison likely provides hidden benefits that make it resistant to change. Perhaps staying small protects you from the judgment that comes with success. Maybe claiming "I can't" shields you from the responsibility of "I won't." Understanding these secondary gains, the ways your limitations serve you, is crucial for sustainable change. Mapping your mental prison requires honest self-examination. Where do you consistently stop short, despite having the necessary skills and opportunities? What stories do you tell yourself about what's possible or appropriate for someone like you? What potential outcomes are you protecting yourself from by maintaining these boundaries? Recognizing these self-imposed limitations represents the essential first step toward mental freedom. Only by understanding how your mental prison serves and constraints can you begin the process of dismantling its walls. The boundaries that feel so solid today may be revealed as nothing more than persistent illusions, ready to dissolve in the light of conscious awareness. Your perceptions create your reality, and those perceptions are far more malleable than they appear. Just as the caged bird's limitations exist only in memory once the door opens, your mental boundaries persist only through unconscious acceptance. The walls of your mental prison may feel solid, but they're built of thoughts that can be questioned, challenged, and ultimately transformed. Each belief that constrains you was constructed piece by piece through experiences, interpretations, and borrowed wisdom that you've collected over time. These mental structures feel permanent because you've lived within them for so long, reinforcing their seeming solidity with each cautious step away from their edges. But like a hologram that disappears when you reach out to touch it, these barriers have no substance beyond the power you give them through your belief in their reality. They are shadows cast by thoughts you've accepted as truth, walls built from assumptions you've never questioned, boundaries drawn in the sand of your consciousness that remain only because you continue to honor them. Every time you've told yourself, "I can't," "I'm not ready," or "that's impossible," you've added another brick to these illusory walls. Yet each of these limitations exists only in the architecture of your thoughts. Chapter 8. The Roots of Self-Sabotage. Why do you repeatedly undermine your own success just when things start going well? This question strikes at the heart of one of human psychology's most perplexing paradoxes. You work diligently toward a goal, make significant progress, and then, seemingly out of nowhere, engage in behaviors that derail your momentum. This pattern isn't random or a sign of weakness. It's a sophisticated, though ultimately counterproductive form of self-protection. The mind operates with an internal thermostat for success, happiness, and achievement, a psychological set point established through years of conditioning. When you begin to exceed this set point, even slightly, an unconscious alarm system activates. This isn't a rational response, but a deeply ingrained protective mechanism that equates the unfamiliar territory of greater success with potential danger. Consider success like altitude. As you climb higher than your mind believes is safe, it initiates behaviors designed to bring you back to familiar ground. These behaviors often appear as procrastination, relationship conflicts, health neglect, or financial decisions that seem inexplicable in retrospect. Your conscious mind sets ambitious goals while your unconscious mind, operating from older programming, works to maintain what it perceives as a safe status quo. This internal conflict manifests in predictable patterns. Just before a major presentation, you might stay up late watching videos, ensuring you'll be too tired to perform at your best. As your business begins to grow, you might pick unnecessary fights with key clients. When your relationship deepens, you might suddenly become critical or distant. These aren't character flaws. They're safety mechanisms responding to the discomfort of exceeding your psychological upper limits. The mind develops these upper limits based on early experiences and observations. If you grew up in an environment where success brought negative consequences, increased expectations, others' jealousy, loss of connection, your mind may have learned to associate achievement with danger. Similarly, if you internalize messages about not deserving success or happiness, exceeding those perceived limits can trigger intense discomfort that demands resolution. Understanding this dynamic reveals why traditional approaches to breaking self-sabotage often fail. Willpower and self-discipline can't override these deeply embedded protective mechanisms. The key lies in recognizing that self-sabotage, paradoxically, represents your mind's attempt to keep you safe rather than a desire to harm yourself. Your unconscious mind will continue creating obstacles until it perceives safety and success. This requires gradually expanding your zone of tolerance for positive experiences while addressing the underlying beliefs that equate success with danger. The process begins with awareness, noticing the specific ways you undermine progress and identifying the emotional triggers that precede these behaviors. Pay attention to the moments when things are going well. What sensations arise in your body? What thoughts begin to surface? These are the warning signs of approaching your upper limits. Rather than fighting these signals, treat them as valuable information about where your psychological boundaries lie. The path beyond self-sabotage requires understanding what these behaviors provide. Every pattern of self-sabotage serves a purpose, whether protecting you from potential rejection, maintaining a familiar identity, or avoiding increased responsibility. Only by identifying and directly addressing these underlying needs can you create sustainable change. Self-sabotage patterns often cluster around specific themes: achievement, relationships, health, or finances. By examining the consistency of these patterns across different areas of life, you can begin to recognize your particular style of self-limitation. Some people create external chaos when internal success feels threatening. Others dampen their energy or enthusiasm to avoid outgrowing relationships. Still others use physical symptoms to justify stepping back from opportunities. These patterns connect directly to the two internal voices explored earlier: the protective voice that maintains limitations and the expansive voice that calls you toward growth. Self-sabotage represents the protective voice taking direct action when it perceives its boundaries being exceeded. The key to transformation lies not in silencing this voice, but in understanding its concerns and showing it a new path to safety through growth rather than limitation. When you learn to recognize these voices in action, you gain the power to consciously choose which one guides your decisions. The protective voice isn't your enemy. It's a part of you that needs reassurance and a broader vision of what safety looks like. By acknowledging its fears while gently expanding its perspective, you create an internal alliance where growth and security work together rather than oppose each other. This shift transforms self-sabotage from an unconscious reaction into an opportunity for deeper self-understanding and intentional choice. When you honor both voices, the cautious protector and the bold explorer, they begin to harmonize rather than clash. Your inner guardian relaxes its grip not because you've overpowered it, but because you've shown it a broader vision of safety. What once manifested as resistance becomes a source of wisdom, offering insights about your true needs and boundaries. This integration allows you to move forward with both courage and discernment, transforming internal conflict into collaborative growth. Chapter 9: Breaking the Chains of Perfectionism. The relentless pursuit of excellence seems virtuous on the surface. After all, shouldn't you always strive to do your best? Yet this seemingly noble intention often becomes the very force that prevents meaningful achievement. Perfectionism masquerades as high standards, but functions primarily as an elaborate defense mechanism against criticism, failure, and feelings of inadequacy. When you examine your perfectionist tendencies closely, you'll notice they rarely lead to better outcomes. Instead, they create a perpetual state of tension and dissatisfaction. You meticulously plan every detail, obsess over minor flaws, and hold yourself to impossible standards, all while watching others achieve more with less apparent effort. This isn't because they're more talented or capable. They've simply avoided the paralysis that perfectionism induces. Perfectionism operates like a demanding taskmaster who's never satisfied, constantly moving the goalposts of good enough further away. It convinces you that anything less than flawless execution is failure, creating an exhausting cycle of over-preparation and under-delivery. The mind becomes consumed with endless revision, refinement, and rumination, leaving little energy for actual creation or implementation. The counterintuitive truth is that good enough implementation consistently outperforms perfect planning. Consider how many projects remain unrealized in your life, not because you lack ability, but because you're waiting for perfect conditions or complete certainty. The cost of this waiting isn't just delayed progress, it's compounded lost opportunity. Perfectionism manifests in three primary ways, each extracting a specific toll on your potential. First, impossible standards create a constant sense of falling short, regardless of actual achievement. You could accomplish 95% of your goals and still feel like a failure because of that remaining 5%. Second, the hyper-focus on flaws rather than progress blinds you to how far you've come, making each step forward feel insufficient. Third, all-or-nothing thinking turns every endeavor into a high-stakes game where anything less than complete success equals total failure. This mindset particularly impacts creativity and innovation. When every attempt must be perfect, experimentation becomes too risky. You stop taking the necessary changes that lead to breakthroughs. Your work becomes safe and predictable, technically proficient perhaps, but lacking the spark that comes from willingness to be imperfect. The path beyond perfectionism begins with understanding its true nature. It's not your friend pushing you toward excellence. It's fear disguising itself as high standards. Real excellence emerges from a growth mindset that values progress over perfection, learning over flawlessness, and action over endless preparation. Strategic incompletion offers a practical antidote to perfectionism paralysis. This approach involves consciously choosing where excellence truly matters and where good enough serves the greater goal. Not every aspect of a project requires the same level of refinement. By deliberately leaving some elements at 80% while focusing your energy on the 20% that creates the most impact, you maintain momentum while still delivering quality where it counts most. The distinction between excellence and perfectionism lies in their underlying motivations and outcomes. Excellence focuses on growth, impact, and continuous improvement while accepting that perfection is neither possible nor necessary. It sets high but achievable standards that push you to develop while maintaining forward momentum. Perfectionism, conversely, focuses on avoiding criticism and failure, setting impossible standards that guarantee disappointment and stagnation. Your relationship with mistakes reveals which mindset drives you. Excellence views mistakes as valuable data points for improvement. Perfectionism sees them as evidence of inadequacy. This fundamental difference determines whether challenges energize or paralyze you. This shift from perfectionism to excellence aligns with the core principle of working with, rather than against your mind's natural functioning. Trying to force perfection creates the same exhausting resistance as relying purely on willpower. True progress comes from aligning your standards with reality, maintaining high quality where it matters while accepting that imperfect action trumps perfect inaction. You'll find that releasing the need for perfection doesn't lower your standards, but rather elevates your impact. When you stop exhausting yourself trying to achieve the impossible, you discover the energy to accomplish what truly matters. This alignment with reality transforms the draining battle against yourself into a flowing partnership with your natural capabilities, allowing you to direct your full power toward meaningful growth rather than wasteful resistance. You move from fighting upstream to navigating with the current, discovering an effortless strength that was always available, but hidden behind the exhausting struggle for control. Each step forward becomes an expression of your authentic power rather than a test of your endurance. And what once felt like an uphill climb transforms into an energizing exploration of your potential. Chapter 10. The Comparison Trap. Have you ever noticed how a perfectly good day can be instantly ruined by a single glimpse into someone else's seemingly perfect life? In today's hyper-connected world, you're continuously bombarded with carefully curated snapshots of others' achievements, relationships, and lifestyles. Each scroll through social media becomes an invitation to measure yourself against an endless parade of filtered highlights, leaving you feeling perpetually behind despite your own progress. This constant comparison isn't just emotionally draining, it fundamentally distorts your perception of reality. When you compare yourself to others, you're not seeing the complete picture. You measure your full experience, including all the doubts, struggles, and failures, against someone else's highlight reel. It's like watching a movie's dramatic finale without seeing the character development, conflicts, and setbacks that made that moment meaningful. The human mind evolved with comparison as a survival mechanism. In ancient times, accurately assessing your standing within the tribe could mean the difference between life and death. But in today's world, this once useful tool has become a source of unnecessary suffering. Every time you measure yourself against others, you enter a no-win situation. Comparing yourself to those ahead creates feelings of inadequacy and despair, while comparing yourself to those behind leads to either complacency or arrogance. Think of personal growth like running a race. When runners constantly look at other lanes, they lose speed and rhythm. Their form suffers, and they're more likely to stumble. The fastest runners stay focused on their lane, maintaining their pace and form regardless of what's happening around them. Similarly, your most significant progress comes when you focus on your unique path, rather than constantly checking where others stand. This doesn't mean becoming blind to others' achievements or immune to inspiration. The key lies in distinguishing between toxic comparison and constructive observation. Toxic comparison asks, "Why aren't I there yet?" Or, "Why can't I be more like them?" It focuses on perceived gaps and deficiencies, creating resistance to your current reality. Constructive observation, on the other hand, ASOS, what can I learn from their journey? Or, how does their success expand what I believe is possible? It uses others' achievements as proof of human potential while maintaining focus on your unique path. Your achievements lose their sweetness when filtered through the lens of comparison. That promotion you worked hard for suddenly feels inadequate when you learn about a peer's more prestigious position. The home you saved years to buy seems less special when you see someone else's larger house. The relationship you've carefully nurtured appears lacking when compared to the perfect couples in your social media feed. This comparative mindset creates a moving target that prevents genuine satisfaction. There will always be someone with more accomplishments, better circumstances, or greater resources. By measuring your worth through comparison, you surrender your power to an external standard that can never be met. The path to freedom from comparison begins with recognizing that your journey is uniquely yours. Your circumstances, challenges, talents, and timing are specific to you. What looks like an overnight success in someone else's story often masks years of unseen preparation, failed attempts, and crucial learning experiences. When you understand this, you can begin to develop standards based on internal alignment rather than external validation. Comparison becomes particularly toxic in the digital age because social media presents a distorted version of reality. People naturally share their best moments, biggest wins, and most flattering angles. This creates an artificial environment where everyone else seems to be living their best life, while you're intimately aware of your own struggles and setbacks. This heightened exposure to others' curated highlights triggers what psychologists call compare and despair syndrome. You begin to question your choices, doubt your progress, and lose confidence in your path. The mental energy spent on comparison could be invested in actual growth and development. Remember, every moment spent comparing yourself to others is a moment not spent developing your unique gifts or moving toward your specific goals. This doesn't mean becoming self-absorbed or disconnected. Instead, it means choosing to focus your attention on what truly matters: your personal growth, your authentic expression, and your meaningful contribution to the world. The healthiest relationships with others' success come from viewing them as proof of what's possible rather than evidence of your inadequacy. When someone achieves something remarkable, let it expand your sense of human potential while maintaining focus on your unique expression of excellence. Their victories become fuel for your aspirations, rather than fodder for self-doubt. The success of others illuminates pathways you might not have seen before, revealing fresh possibilities while affirming that extraordinary achievement lies within human grasp. By celebrating their accomplishments without diminishing your own journey, you transform what could be a source of discouragement into a wellspring of inspiration. Your path may look different, your timeline may vary, but their success proves that barriers can be overcome and dreams can materialize through persistent, focused effort. Chapter 11. Facing Fear. What if every fear you've been avoiding is actually pointing directly toward your greatest potential for growth? This question challenges everything you've been taught about fear and its role in your life. While your instinct may be to retreat from fear, to see it as a warning signal to stop, this perspective overlooks fear's most valuable function, as a compass pointing toward your next level of expansion. Your brain's threat detection system, designed for a world of physical dangers, now responds to social and psychological challenges with the same intensity it would a predator. A questioning look from a colleague, The thought of public speaking or the prospect of starting a new venture can trigger the same physiological response as facing actual danger. This hypervigilance, while well-intentioned, creates a fundamental misinterpretation of growth opportunities as threats. The various forms of fear each speak to different aspects of potential growth. Fear of failure points toward opportunities for skill development and resilience. Fear of rejection indicates possibilities for deeper connection and authentic expression. Fear of success often reveals areas where your self-image needs expansion. Even fear of uncertainty highlights chances to develop adaptability and trust in your capabilities. What makes fear particularly insidious is how it operates in a self-reinforcing cycle. When you avoid what you fear, you experience immediate relief. Your anxiety decreases, your body relaxes, and your mind registers this as a successful survival strategy. However, this temporary comfort comes at the cost of reinforcing the fear's power. Each avoidance strengthens the neural pathways that interpret that situation as threatening, making it more likely you'll avoid similar situations in the future. The cruel irony of fear is that anticipation typically creates more suffering than the feared experience itself. Your mind's ability to vividly imagine worst-case scenarios often generates more stress and anxiety than actually facing the situation. This anticipatory anxiety drains your energy and resources while keeping you stuck in patterns of limitation. Understanding fear's mechanism reveals its fundamental nature as information rather than instruction. When fear arises, it's signaling the presence of something significant, an opportunity that matters enough to trigger your protection systems. Rather than automatically retreating, this awareness allows you to pause and evaluate. Is this fear protecting me from genuine danger, or is it highlighting an opportunity for growth? The physiological experience of fear, racing heart, shallow breathing, muscular tension, feels undeniably real and pressing. These sensations can be so overwhelming that they seem to demand immediate escape. However, these physical responses don't necessarily indicate actual danger. They're often simply your body preparing for meaningful action. This preparation, while uncomfortable, provides the energy and focus needed for breakthrough performance. Fear's grip maintains its power through isolation and shame. When you believe you're alone in your fears, or that experiencing fear indicates weakness, you're less likely to confront them directly. However, fear is a universal human experience, particularly for those pursuing growth and achievement. Every major advancement in human history, every personal breakthrough, required someone to move forward despite fear, rather than in the absence of it. The path forward isn't about eliminating fear, but about developing a new relationship with it. This shift begins with recognition, identifying specific fears controlling your choices and mapping how they limit your life. By examining fear's influence across different contexts, career, relationships, creative expression, personal development, patterns emerge that reveal where growth awaits. The transformation of fear from barrier to gateway requires strategic exposure rather than reckless confrontation. This means gradually engaging with feared situations in manageable increments, allowing your nervous system to update its threat assessment through direct experience rather than imagination. Each successful engagement, no matter how small, begins to rewire your relationship with fear. This process isn't about forcing yourself through fear, through sheer willpower. Instead, it's about bringing curiosity to fear's message, asking what growth opportunity it's highlighting, and taking calculated steps toward that growth while managing your physiological response. This approach transforms fear from an enemy to be fought into a guide to be consulted. As you develop this new relationship with fear, you'll notice something remarkable. The situations and opportunities that once seemed impossibly threatening begin to appear manageable, even inviting. This isn't because the situations have changed, but because your perception of your capacity to handle them has expanded through direct experience. Chapter 12. The Identity Illusion. If you woke up tomorrow with complete amnesia, no memory of your past experiences, achievements, or failures, who would you become? Without the weight of your history, the limitations of your learned beliefs, and the boundaries of your established self-image, what possibilities would suddenly become available to you? Your self-concept, the collection of beliefs you hold about who you are, acts as an invisible force field, silently determining what actions feel possible or impossible, natural or unnatural, like you or not like you. This identity isn't something you were born with. It's a construct built from accumulated experiences, repeated stories, and internalized messages about your capabilities and limitations. When you say, "I'm not good at public speaking," or "I'm not a morning person," or "I'm terrible with money," you're not describing unchangeable facts about yourself. You're expressing beliefs that have become so familiar they feel like truth. These self-definitions create a powerful, self-fulfilling prophecy. Your mind automatically filters experiences to confirm these beliefs, while dismissing evidence that contradicts them. Think of your current identity as a character you've become deeply invested in playing. Like an actor who's performed the same role for so long they've forgotten their acting. You've internalized certain traits, tendencies, and limitations as inherent aspects of who you are. But just as an actor can step into different roles, your identity is far more fluid than you've been led to believe. The power of identity lies in its ability to drive behavior without requiring conscious effort. When something aligns with your self-concept, it feels natural and automatic. When something contradicts it, it feels forced and draining. This explains why willpower often fails. You're trying to force actions that conflict with your fundamental beliefs about who you are. Consider how differently you behave in various contexts. You might be reserved in professional settings but expressive with close friends, disciplined about work but chaotic with personal projects. These variations demonstrate that your identity is not fixed, but contextual, shifting based on the role you believe you need to play in each situation. The key to sustainable change lies not in forcing yourself to act differently, but in gradually shifting your self-concept so new behaviors feel natural and aligned. This doesn't require wholesale reinvention, but rather small adjustments in how you view yourself. Instead of declaring "I am" statements that feel false, adopt provisional identities that create space for growth. I am becoming more confident. I am developing better habits. I am learning to manage money effectively. Your identity is not a fixed destination, but a continuous evolution. By consciously choosing and embodying the identity that supports your aspirations, rather than perpetuating the one built from your past, you create lasting change without the exhausting struggle of willpower. This shift from fighting against your current identity to growing into a new one transforms the change process from a battle into an unfolding. The resistance you feel toward change often stems from your current identity trying to maintain consistency. Understanding this allows you to work with rather than against this tendency, gradually expanding your self-concept to include new possibilities while maintaining enough stability to feel secure. Language plays a crucial role in this transformation. The stories you tell about yourself, the labels you accept or reject, and the way you interpret your experiences all contribute to your evolving identity. By consciously choosing language that emphasizes growth and possibility, I'm learning instead of I can't, not yet instead of never, you create linguistic bridges to new ways of being. This identity work connects directly to the two voices explored earlier: the protective voice that maintains your current identity, and the expansive voice that calls you toward growth. By understanding that your current self-concept is a construction rather than an immutable truth, you gain the freedom to consciously choose which aspects to maintain and which to evolve. Your identity is not a prison sentence, but a creative project. With each small shift in how you view yourself, you expand the range of what feels possible and natural. This isn't about becoming someone entirely different, but about allowing yourself to grow beyond the artificial boundaries of who you currently believe yourself to be. The stories you tell about your capabilities, your worth, and your potential shape the actions you take and the opportunities you pursue. When you begin to question these stories, not to invalidate them, but to examine their origins and test their truth, you discover spaces where growth can flourish. Your current identity exists like a comfortable but well-worn garment. You can choose which parts still serve you and which you've outgrown. By viewing identity as fluid rather than fixed, you free yourself to incorporate new strengths while honoring the wisdom your experiences have given you. Chapter 13: Harnessing the Power of Habits. Your life today is essentially the sum of your habits. What you repeatedly do ultimately defines who you become. While goals and intention shape the direction of your journey, habits create the actual pathway that leads to your destination. Every action you take, thought you nurture, and response you generate stems from patterns so deeply embedded they operate largely outside your conscious awareness. These automated sequences serve a crucial evolutionary purpose. Your brain, consuming roughly 20% of your body's energy while representing only 2% of its mass, developed habits as an efficiency mechanism. By relegating routine decisions and actions to your subconscious mind, you conserve precious mental energy for novel situations that genuinely require deliberate thought. This efficiency comes with a price. Once established, habits become remarkably resistant to change, persisting even when they no longer serve your best interests. This explains why you can repeatedly set the same intention to exercise more, eat better, be more productive, yet find yourself defaulting to familiar patterns despite your conscious desires. Understanding how habits form and function within your brain reveals why traditional approaches to change often fail. Habits operate through a distinct neurological loop. A cue triggers a craving, which prompts a response, which delivers a reward. This sequence becomes so automated that the mere presence of the cue initiates the entire pattern before conscious awareness catches up. Take the common habit of checking your phone when feeling momentarily uncomfortable or bored. The cue, emotional discomfort, triggers a craving for distraction or stimulation, leading to a response, reaching for your phone, which provides a reward, temporary relief through engagement. This sequence happens so quickly and automatically that you often find yourself scrolling through social media before realizing you've picked up your phone. The power of this habit loop explains why simply trying to stop unwanted behaviors rarely succeeds. When you attempt to break a habit through sheer willpower, you're fighting against neural pathways specifically designed to conserve mental energy by automating behavior. Instead, successful habit change requires working with this system rather than against it. Rather than trying to eliminate negative habits, focus on replacing them with alternatives that satisfy the same underlying needs. If you habitually snack when stressed, for instance, the key isn't to fight the urge for stress relief, but to substitute a different response to that same trigger, perhaps deep breathing or a brief walk. The cue and craving remain the same, but the response and reward shift to support rather than undermine your goals. This understanding reveals the crucial distinction between surface habits and keystone habits. Surface habits are specific behaviors like flossing or checking email first thing in the morning. Keystone habits, however, create a cascade of positive changes across multiple areas of life. Regular exercise, for example, often leads to better eating choices, improved sleep, increased productivity, and enhanced mood. Not through conscious intention, but through the natural ripple effects of that core behavior change. The most effective approach to habit transformation aligns with your mind's natural functioning rather than fighting against it. This means creating environmental conditions that make desired behaviors almost effortless while making undesired behaviors require conscious effort. If you want to read more, place books prominently while keeping your phone in another room. If you want to exercise in the morning, sleep in your workout clothes and place your shoes by the bed. Implementation intentions, specific plans that link desired behaviors to concrete triggers, bypass the need for conscious decision-making. Rather than the vague intention to exercise more, you establish that, when I finish my morning coffee, I will immediately put on my running shoes. This precision eliminates the decision point where habits often fail. The most sustainable changes often start surprisingly small. Rather than attempting dramatic transformations that require constant willpower, focus on tiny but consistent practices that compound over time. A daily 2-minute meditation practice that actually happens creates more lasting change than an intended hour that rarely occurs. This alignment-based approach to habit formation connects directly to the fundamental principle that sustainable change comes through working with, rather than against, your mind's natural tendencies. By understanding and utilizing the habit loop rather than fighting it, you transform what was once your greatest obstacle into your most powerful ally for lasting change. The real power lies not in forcing yourself down a predetermined path, but in structuring your environment and triggers to make desired behaviors feel natural and effortless. When you align your habits with your deepest values and natural rhythms, what once required constant willpower becomes your default response. This shift from resistance to resonance marks the difference between temporary fixes and true transformation. Chapter 14. The Science of Focus and Flow. You've experienced those rare magical moments when everything clicks into place. Time seems to both stand still and fly by. Your performance reaches levels that feel almost supernatural. Every action flows seamlessly into the next with zero hesitation. The voice of self-doubt falls silent. You're completely absorbed in the task at hand, operating at your absolute peak. This state, which psychologists call flow, represents the ultimate expression of mental control. Yet paradoxically, it emerges not through forcing concentration, but through creating the precise conditions that allow your mind to naturally enter this optimal state. Understanding these conditions and how to consistently recreate them transforms flow from a random occurrence into a reliable tool for peak performance. In today's hyper-connected world, sustained concentration has become increasingly rare. Your attention is constantly fragmented by notifications, emails, messages, and the endless stream of digital distractions competing for your focus. The average knowledge worker now gets interrupted every 11 minutes, with each interruption requiring up to 23 minutes to fully regain concentration. This creates an environment actively hostile to the deep focus necessary for flow. The modern workplace often prioritizes constant availability over sustained attention, measuring productivity by activity rather than impact. Open office plans, impromptu meetings, and always-on communication channels create a culture of continuous partial attention, being perpetually distracted by everything while never fully focusing on anything. Yet peak performance requires the opposite, the capacity to completely immerse yourself in a single task, maintaining sustained concentration long enough to pass through the initial resistance and enter the flow state. Like a river current that becomes apparent only once you stop fighting it, flow emerges naturally when you align with, rather than resist your mind's natural tendencies. Specific conditions must be present for flow to emerge. The task must present a clear goal and provide immediate feedback about your progress. The challenge level must precisely match your skill level. Too easy breeds boredom. Too difficult triggers anxiety. You need uninterrupted time blocks long enough to pass through the initial phase of scattered attention into deep focus. Your brain operates in two distinct modes: focused attention for implementation and diffuse attention for idea generation. Understanding this distinction explains why forcing constant concentration actually reduces overall productivity. The key lies in strategically alternating between these modes rather than trying to maintain perpetual focus. Focused attention, necessary for flow, requires protecting your peak energy hours from interruption. These precious windows of natural alertness, typically occurring in 90-minute cycles, represent your best opportunity for entering flow. Trying to force flow during natural energy dips wastes effort while producing inferior results. The environment plays a crucial role in either supporting or preventing flow. Physical spaces, digital interfaces, and social contexts all create subtle cues that either enhance or inhibit sustained attention. Simple modifications like facing away from foot traffic, using website blockers during focus periods, or establishing clear signals that indicate "do not disturb" status can dramatically increase your capacity for flow. Interruptions, while inevitable, need not derail your entire focus session. Specific re-entry protocols, like maintaining a continuation note before breaks or using ritual actions to signal returns to focus, can significantly reduce the recovery time needed to resume flow. These bridges between focus periods maintain momentum even when concentration breaks. Flow represents the ultimate expression of reclaimed attention in an economy designed to capture and monetize your focus. By understanding and implementing the specific conditions that support this state, you transform flow from an occasional accident into a reliable tool for peak performance. The key lies not in forcing concentration through willpower, but in intelligently designing your environment and approach to align with your mind's natural capacity for total immersion. Chapter 15. Mastering Your Mental Narrative. Of all the possible stories you could tell about your life, why have you chosen the one you're currently living? This question strikes at the heart of personal transformation because your life story isn't simply a record of what happened. It's an interpretation that shapes everything you believe possible. Every experience you encounter passes through the lens of your narrative framework. When you face a setback, your interpretive story determines whether you see evidence of personal inadequacy or an opportunity for growth. When you achieve success, your narrative decides if it was luck or the natural result of your capabilities. These stories become so familiar that you stop seeing them as interpretations at all. They transform into what you consider reality itself. Consider how two individuals might process being passed over for a promotion. One creates a narrative of personal inadequacy. "I'm not good enough and never will be." This proves what I've always suspected about myself. The other constructs a story of temporary circumstance and learning. This shows me where I need to develop. It's feedback, not failure. Same event, radically different meanings created through narrative interpretation. Your brain naturally seeks coherence through storytelling, attempting to make sense of random events by weaving them into a meaningful narrative. This meaning-making instinct serves an essential purpose, helping you learn from experience and navigate complexity. However, when these stories become rigid and limiting, they create invisible barriers to growth and possibility. Three primary narrative distortions create unnecessary suffering in your life. Personalization occurs when you assume excessive responsibility for external events, creating stories where everything that happens reflects your worth or capability. Permanence emerges when you interpret current circumstances as fixed and unchangeable, generating narratives that deny the possibility of growth or change. Pervasiveness appears when you allow setbacks in one area to color your entire self-perception, creating stories where a single failure defines your complete identity. These distortions operate automatically unless consciously examined. You cannot prevent the initial interpretive response. It's hardwired into your neural architecture. However, you can develop the capacity to recognize these interpretations as stories rather than reality, creating space for deliberate narrative editing. This editing process doesn't mean denying reality or pretending difficulties don't exist. The events of your life remain unchanged. What shifts is the meaning you assign to these events and the story you construct around them. This distinction between acknowledging reality versus interpreting meaning opens the door to narrative mastery. When you understand that your current life story represents just one possible interpretation among many, you gain the power to consciously craft narratives that serve your growth. This doesn't mean fabricating false positivity, but rather choosing interpretations that honor both challenges and possibilities. Your narrative choices shape your identity more powerfully than your experiences themselves. By becoming aware of your current stories and their impact, you can begin consciously selecting interpretations that pull you toward your potential rather than anchor you to past limitations. The stories you tell yourself create the boundaries of your perceived possibilities. They determine whether you see obstacles as barriers or stepping stones, whether you interpret feedback as judgment or guidance, whether you view your capabilities as fixed or expandable. In essence, your narrative framework constructs the reality you experience. This understanding connects directly to how your perceptions shape experience, as explored earlier. Your narratives act as the stories you tell about your perceptions, creating a compounding effect on how you interpret and interact with the world. By developing narrative awareness, you gain access to one of the most powerful levers for personal transformation: the ability to consciously choose the meaning you make from your experiences. These stories become self-fulfilling prophecies, quietly directing your decisions, reactions, and even the opportunities you notice or dismiss. Each interpretation builds upon the last, weaving an intricate web of beliefs that either lifts you toward growth or holds you in familiar patterns. When you recognize this dynamic, you unlock the profound truth that transformation doesn't require changing your past or even your present circumstances. It simply requires shifting the story through which you view them. Chapter 16. The Mindfulness Advantage. In a world that demands constant activity, your greatest advantage might be the capacity to pause. While others rush frantically from task to task, those who cultivate mindfulness, present moment awareness without judgment, develop an unshakable foundation for peak performance and mental mastery. This isn't about becoming a monk or spending hours in meditation. Mindfulness represents fundamental mental training that enhances every aspect of your functioning. When you strengthen your capacity for present moment awareness, you literally rewire your brain. Research shows that consistent mindfulness practice increases density in the prefrontal cortex, the brain's command center for executive function, decision-making, and emotional regulation. Simultaneously, it reduces activity in the amygdala, the ancient threat detection system that triggers stress responses and emotional reactivity. You might resist this idea, believing you're too busy for mindfulness or that it requires perfect stillness of mind. These are common misconceptions that prevent many from accessing this powerful tool. Think of mindfulness not as another task on your to-do list, but as mental fitness training. Just as physical exercise builds stronger muscles, mindfulness develops core mental capabilities essential for peak performance. The impact extends far beyond stress reduction. Present moment awareness enhances your capacity to focus attention where you choose, rather than where habit or impulse directs it. It develops your ability to recognize thoughts as mental events rather than absolute truth, creating space between stimulus and response where true choice becomes possible. Perhaps most importantly, it builds the capacity to experience emotions fully without being controlled by them, a fundamental skill for maintaining clarity under pressure. There are two primary approaches to developing mindfulness. Formal practice involves setting aside specific time for meditation or focused attention exercises. This builds foundational mental strength, like going to the gym for your mind. Informal practice involves bringing mindful awareness to everyday activities, eating, walking, conversing, working. Both approaches offer distinct benefits that compound over time. The barriers to entry are lower than you might think. Research indicates that even brief daily practices create measurable changes in brain structure and function. Simple, micro practices integrated throughout your day can initiate this transformation. Taking 3 conscious breaths before important meetings, feeling your feet on the ground while walking between tasks, or noting physical sensations during routine activities like washing hands or drinking water. This isn't about achieving some special state or emptying your mind. It's about developing a fundamental life skill, the ability to be fully present with whatever arises. When you cultivate this capacity, you gain access to a level of mental clarity and emotional intelligence that transforms how you navigate challenges and opportunities. Think of your mind as that garden introduced earlier. Mindfulness represents the fundamental awareness that allows you to truly see what's growing there. Without this baseline presence, you're essentially gardening with your eyes closed, reacting to what you bump into rather than consciously cultivating what you want to grow. The key lies not in perfectly executing any particular technique, but in consistently returning to present moment awareness whenever you notice you've drifted away. Each time you catch your mind wandering and gently bring it back, you strengthen the mental muscles needed for sustained attention and emotional regulation. This practice reveals a profound truth. The quality of your life depends not on eliminating challenges, but on developing your capacity to meet them with clarity and composure. Through mindfulness, you build an unshakable foundation that allows you to remain centered, regardless of external circumstances. When you cultivate present moment awareness, you develop what could be called an internal technology, a way of processing experience that enhances every other aspect of mental mastery. It becomes the stable platform from which all other positive changes become possible. Remember, each moment offers an opportunity to practice. The breath is always available as an anchor to the present. Your physical senses provide constant gateways to deeper awareness. The key is starting where you are, with what you have, in this moment. Chapter 17. Cultivating Unshakable Confidence. Confidence isn't the absence of doubt, but the ability to act meaningfully despite it. This fundamental truth challenges everything you've likely believed about self-assurance. While society promotes an image of confident people as unwavering and fearless, true confidence emerges from a deeper source: the ability to embrace uncertainty while staying aligned with your values and purpose. Most approaches to building confidence focus on external achievements or validation. The logic seems sound: accomplish more, receive praise, feel more confident. Yet this path creates a fragile foundation that crumbles when faced with setbacks or criticism. You've likely experienced this yourself, feeling invincible after a success, then watching your confidence evaporate after a single failure or negative comment. The fluctuating nature of confidence reflects its conditional nature. When you base your self-worth on performance, approval, or comparison to others, you create an unstable system that requires constant maintenance. This explains why even highly accomplished individuals often struggle with persistent self-doubt. Their achievements provide temporary boosts, but never address the underlying relationship with uncertainty and failure. Authentic confidence develops through a fundamentally different process. Rather than attempting to eliminate doubt or fear, it emerges from building a healthy relationship with these natural human experiences. This shift transforms confidence from a state you achieve to a capacity you develop. The ability to acknowledge uncertainty while remaining grounded in your values and capabilities. The mind naturally seeks certainty and validation, leading to common patterns that undermine genuine confidence. Perfectionism represents an attempt to control outcomes and avoid criticism. People-pleasing reflects trusting others' judgments over your own internal guidance. Procrastination often masks a fear of falling short of expectations. These patterns share a common root: misplaced trust in external validation over internal authority. Developing authentic confidence requires dismantling these protective patterns while building new foundations. This means recognizing that your worth isn't determined by performance or others' opinions. It involves understanding that confidence doesn't eliminate fear, but provides the capacity to act meaningfully despite it. The path to genuine confidence begins with identifying your unique sources of internal strength, the values, principles, and capabilities that remain constant regardless of external circumstances. Rather than seeking to eliminate uncertainty, focus on expanding your comfort with discomfort through graduated exposure to challenging situations. This builds evidence of your ability to handle difficulty rather than avoid it. True confidence emerges from trusting your capacity to learn and adapt, rather than needing to know all answers in advance. It develops through consistent small acts of courage, choosing growth over comfort, authenticity over approval, and learning over protection. Each time you act despite doubt, you strengthen this internal foundation. The transformation occurs not through eliminating fear, but by changing your relationship with it. Instead of seeing fear as evidence of inadequacy, recognize it as a natural response to growth opportunities. Rather than waiting to feel confident before acting, use action itself as the pathway to developing genuine confidence. Your journey toward authentic confidence begins with accepting that doubt and uncertainty aren't obstacles to overcome, but natural elements of meaningful growth. By shifting focus from eliminating these experiences to building your capacity to act meaningfully despite them, You lay the foundation for lasting self-assurance grounded in internal truth rather than external validation. The development of genuine confidence mirrors the growth of a tree. It requires deep roots in self-trust, regular nourishment through aligned action, and the flexibility to bend with challenges without breaking. Through this process, confidence transforms from a fragile state dependent on circumstances to an unshakable core that sustains you through all conditions. This awareness positions confidence not as an achievement to reach, but as a capacity to cultivate. It emerges not from the absence of doubt, but from your growing ability to hold uncertainty while remaining connected to your deeper purpose and values. In this way, confidence becomes not about being fearless, but about remaining true to yourself, even in the presence of fear. Chapter 18. Integration. Why do we so often know what to do, yet fail to consistently act on that knowledge? This question strikes at the heart of personal transformation and reveals a crucial truth. Information alone does not create change. You've likely experienced this disconnect. Moments of profound insight followed by a return to familiar patterns, leaving you wondering why knowledge isn't enough. Understanding this gap between knowing and doing illuminates the final frontier of mental mastery. Your mind processes information on multiple levels, each requiring different engagement. At the intellectual level, you grasp concepts and recognize their value. Yet this surface understanding, while necessary, rarely penetrates deeply enough to override established patterns of thought and behavior. True transformation occurs through experiential learning, when insights move from abstract concepts to lived reality. Think of how you learned to ride a bicycle. No amount of theoretical knowledge could replace the actual experience of maintaining balance while in motion. Similarly, mental mastery requires moving beyond intellectual understanding to embodied wisdom. Consider how you process stress. You may intellectually understand that most situations aren't genuinely threatening, yet your body still reacts with tension and anxiety. This demonstrates the gap between knowing something and having that knowledge integrated deeply enough to automatically guide your responses. The journey from information to implementation involves 3 distinct levels of knowing. The first level, intellectual understanding, provides the essential foundation, but often creates the illusion of progress without actual change. You recognize truth in concepts and may even teach them to others while still struggling to embody them consistently. The second level, experiential recognition, emerges through deliberate practice and reflection. Here, concepts transform from abstract ideas into tangible experiences. You begin noticing patterns as they occur rather than just understanding them theoretically. This awareness creates choice points where new responses become possible. The third level, embodied wisdom, represents the ultimate integration where principles operate automatically without conscious effort. Like an experienced driver who naturally adjusts to road conditions without deliberate thought. Your responses align with deeper understanding rather than reactive patterns. Moving through these levels requires a fundamentally different approach than acquiring more information. Rather than adding new concepts, focus on deeply integrating what you already know. This integration process resembles weaving individual threads into a seamless fabric. Each principle taught throughout this book, from understanding the mind's natural functioning to recognizing limiting patterns to cultivating present moment awareness, represents a crucial thread. When woven together through consistent practice, they create a unified approach to mental mastery far more powerful than any individual component. The key lies in consistent practice that honors your natural rhythms and tendencies rather than forcing change through willpower. Small, aligned actions performed consistently create lasting transformation, while dramatic but unsustainable changes often lead back to familiar patterns. This explains why attempts to overhaul your entire life overnight typically fail, while modest adjustments maintained over time create profound shifts. Integration occurs naturally when you create the right conditions rather than forcing specific outcomes. Just as a garden flourishes when provided proper soil, water, and sunlight, your mental landscape transforms when given appropriate attention and care. This requires shifting focus from achieving particular results to establishing supportive conditions that allow natural growth. The practice of integration differs fundamentally from the accumulation of techniques. Rather than adding more tools to your mental toolkit, integration involves embodying existing insights so deeply they become your natural way of being. This transforms mental mastery from something you do into something you are. This brings us full circle to the original question about the gap between knowing and doing. The bridge across this gap isn't built through more knowledge, but through patient, persistent practice that allows wisdom to take root deeply enough to guide behavior naturally. Success lies not in forcing change, but in creating conditions where transformation emerges organically, through aligned action and consistent attention. Conclusion. Throughout these chapters, you've embarked on a transformative journey, discovering how your mind, once perceived as an obstacle, actually serves as your most powerful ally in creating lasting change. What began as an exploration of mental limitations has revealed itself as an awakening to extraordinary potential that was always present, but previously hidden from view. You've learned that your mind operates like a garden, where thoughts flourish or fade based on the attention they receive. This fundamental principle reveals why fighting against unwanted thoughts only strengthens them, while consciously directing attention toward beneficial perspectives naturally allows limitations to dissolve. You've discovered how to distinguish between your mind's two distinct voices: the protective voice of limitation and the expansive voice of possibility, understanding that both serve important functions when properly understood and contextualized. The power of perception has become clear. Your experience of reality depends not on circumstances themselves, but on how you interpret them. This insight transforms obstacles from insurmountable barriers into opportunities for growth, revealing how controlling your perceptual lens proves far more effective than fighting against what you see through it. Perhaps most importantly, you've discovered the principle of alignment, working with rather than against your mind's natural functioning. This understanding liberates you from the exhausting cycle of forcing change through willpower, revealing how sustainable transformation emerges through conscious cooperation with your mental processes. Remember that transformation isn't a destination, but an ongoing journey. Moments of reverting to old patterns under stress don't represent failure, but opportunities to deepen your practice. Each challenge provides a chance to implement these principles more fully, developing greater mental flexibility and emotional resilience over time. Your relationship with your mind has fundamentally shifted from opposition to partnership. This evolution continues through consistent practice and compassionate awareness, gradually expanding what you believe possible. As this partnership deepens, you'll experience greater emotional equilibrium, reduced mental friction, and more consistent alignment between intentions and actions. The path forward doesn't require dramatic changes or perfect implementation. Small, consistent applications of these principles create sustainable momentum that builds upon itself. The awareness you've developed, your ability to recognize mental patterns that previously operated unchecked, serves as the foundation for ongoing growth. You already possess everything needed for continued transformation. The power has always resided within you, waiting to be uncovered through understanding rather than forced through discipline. By maintaining this awareness and approaching challenges with curiosity rather than judgment, you create an ever-expanding landscape of possibility. Your mind, once experienced as a source of limitation, now reveals itself as an infinite resource for growth, creativity, and fulfillment. The journey continues, but you now possess the map for navigation, the tools for cultivation, and most importantly, the understanding that true power comes not from controlling your mind, but from partnering with its natural wisdom. Thank you for listening and for investing in yourself. I believe in you, your potential. Thank you for listening and for investing in yourself. I believe in you. Your potential is endless. Now, go out there and create the life you deserve.